Welcome back to Data Dash, everyone. My name is not Nicholas Merton. But I hope you all are having a great day, great rest of your week so far as we're closing out Friday as the markets are exponentially higher than they were on Monday. Today is Friday, October 3rd of 2025. I'm Paul Sampson coming to you live here for the first time on this channel, right? So for anybody that's new to me, I've been working with Nick here at Data Dash since the beginning of this year. I've been performing a bunch of pre-recorded videos up till now. And I just thought we'd, kind of throw it up a little spice in the game here and add in a little live stream. So really excited to just kind of just kick back, take a little bit more relaxed approach to the market, maybe sit on here for an hour, get a little chat back and forth with anybody. Feel free to ask any questions, of course. Pretty much have an open agenda. I'll take a look at Bitcoin and the overall higher time frame things just to kind of kick it off. Maybe the total markets, total 2, total 3, things along those lines. So be sure to grab yourself a cup of coffee, whether it's hot or iced. I've got the old pumpkin spice latte here ready, a big boy here ready for us. So yeah, let's go ahead and kick it on off. Hope you're all having a great day. All right, so pull up the chat really quickly so I can go ahead and keep an eye on that. Go back and forth with everybody. Bear with me. Make sure, I guess I should check and see that the volume and everything is good before we waste too much time here. All right. TV says, hello, everyone. I don't know if that's Trading View, just checking in. How are you? M says, good morning. Bull Runner, how you doing, my friend? Marco Rolla. Hey, Paul, good to see you live. You got nice to see you there, too. Yeah, I used to live stream all the time, so this is nothing new. Just want to make sure that this is set up properly. All right. Hey, Paul. Hey, Nick. Yeah, the best part about me working with Nick over the last few months, and he still is here working with the channel. You can see just a few videos ago, he pretty much chimes in with an update probably every 4 or 5 weeks, in the channel here. Working on some bigger picture things behind the scenes, focusing on the Dash report, obviously some of the more macro outlooks on some of the stocks and everything that we've been working on there. And a lot of people actually think that I am Nick and just gained a little weight, put some glasses on. So we always enjoy seeing those comments. I almost just came on and introduced myself as Nick and just, maybe kept it going to see if anybody really bought it. But I didn't think the majority would fall for it. But yeah, good to be here, everybody. All right, let's see here. Ice Cream Man says, good morning. You're 100%. Perfect. And the good guy says 5x5 on sound good. All right. Thank you for the feedback there. All right. I continue to hear that. I'll just read a few of these chat questions real quick, and then I'll get into the charts for a second. Like I said, kind of no agenda today, just a little open floor. And probably going to be doing these every Friday. So just, more to come. So if we don't cover everything today, of course, we'll do some more as we go on. All right, let's see. Continue to hear that there might be a big downturn soon. Based on your analysis, are you thinking that might be a year or two out? So depending on what you mean here, yet I do think that personally, just if you've not caught up on any of the videos, especially that I've been putting out recently, I added 2 more videos a week where I kind of focus on a little bit of everything versus instead of just, Bitcoin or just, even just the today's market type of deal or even the next few months. But yeah, overall, I've been anticipating that the all markets would basically come to a head in 2027 and 2028. 2026 to 2029 has always kind of been my real net. Again, that's been something I've been targeting since 2018, right? So a 10-year window from there, all based around the housing market cycle, 20-year, economic cycle, the business cycle. I think that crypto's in the beginning, or crypto's putting in its very first 20-year cycle here. There's a lot of things that go into it. So I fully agree. I think that we are going to see an incredible collapse, to be honest, in probably the next 2 to 3 years. I just don't think it's here yet. And that's one of the biggest, issues is that I think a lot of people have been trying to time that. And again, I'm not looking to be absolutely right on that. But so far it's been playing out pretty well, as we all know, as everything's been blowing up to the upside. So the 2020 timeframe came in, the black swan event that ushered in certain things like high interest rates, high inflation. Everybody expected the markets to collapse even lower. Ever since then, we've seen nothing but literally all-time highs across the board. Cover that pretty deeply as well. So yes, to answer your question, I do think a major collapse in all markets is right around the corner. Just not right now. Okay, so if that's what you meant, more bigger picture. Let's take a look at a couple more questions here, and then we'll just jump on into it. All right. So I think Bitcoin will close the recent CME gap. I actually have not even looked at the recent CME gap, probably from last weekend, if I had to guess, and it's probably all the way back at like 10, probably in this region. Let's see where we closed Friday. Yeah, so we closed Friday around here, and then Monday we opened up in this region. So I think that we will close that gap at some point. Just my bias here is that we'll probably go higher here first. I still target like 130,000 potentially. I will say, of course, that like we're in that window of time where, is this the high for a hot minute? The 125 that we put in back in August. It's a really hard thing to kind of go off of here. For me, I've been looking for a notable high, not necessarily a bull market. Like, I'm not looking at the market as in like a 4-year cycle idea, right? So again, I'm looking at this as more so the overall market's kind of continuing up over the next few years. But as we all know, even in the overall time, things pullbacks occur, right? So even if we look back to just the beginning of this year, it doesn't feel like it was, when we lived this out, it was a little tough, but now looking back, you kind of don't even really remember it too well. But this is when we topped at 110 and we had, a $30,000 drop over the course of a few months, really painful, really scary. Tariff war fears were, going nuts at that point, right? Everybody was super fearful at these lows. And then, of course, we continued onward and upward here. We had another pullback last year, very similar to that, right? Kind of just slow and to the right. Let's just kind of zoom this out more so. So something along this line right here, right, where we had this really long, 74,000 all-time high. Everybody's super pumped. ETFs are kicking butt. No reason why we would see any kind of pullback. And then you slowly get this, huge move down. You get the carry trade news right at the low, right? Everybody's super fearful. Everything's going to collapse. You get that next move up. And then we even take this all the way back to like earlier on in the bull run here. If you look at like 2023, similar thing, huge burst out of the beginning of the year here, and then just slow, kind of sideways and down, right? Huge consolidation before you head up. Each of these moves are only like 30% pullbacks, right? You're talking 26 right there, talking another 33 right here, 31 to 2 right here. So for me, if this is not already the high, I think that the high is coming in around this region. 130, 140 is kind of always, not always, but it's been my target zone for quite a while. But I was also looking at that as the end of September of 2025. Again, it's looking way out. So if we came up and if this is our high, 1 month earlier than anticipated and $5,000 less, it's just something to be aware of. But I do still think that we go higher first. And to answer the question about the CME gap, which is, again, probably down here, if I had to guess, but without looking, I think that more than likely we go up first and then we see a pretty decent pullback. So that's kind of the bigger picture there, is that I think we push it up a little bit more. I think that everybody's going to really be in love with the idea that Q4 this year is going to be absolutely crazy. And it may be for a bit, right? We might still see a few more weeks of upside. I think that the altcoins actually may put in some more upside here along the way too. So it's just one of those times where I don't think you want to be too overly like leaning into we're at highs, right? Especially on Bitcoin. Some of the altcoins are not, and that's not fun. And if we do start getting some really big bursts, which I think we have potential for like 30, 40, 50, 100% moves in some of the altcoins, it's just a time probably when you want to be a little more aggressive here. And the reason being is Bitcoin, right? Because I have multiple reasons to believe that whether or not that's our high for now, whether we push it up to 130, in this 130 to 140 zone, it is super likely that triggers the next one of these, right? The next 30% pullback. All right. And that takes us to 80s, 90s. Okay. So it's not going to be fun in the short term, but that's really all I see happening, is that it probably is something that happens in a short term. People will probably be arguing at that point. If we pushed up in the next few days here and we hit 130, let's just say in middle of October, even November, all coins go crazy for a few weeks and then everything takes a hit. What is everyone's initial thoughts going to be? Bear market's here, easy short, get out of the market. I'm coming back in a year, blah, blah, blah. I see more so like maybe 5 months that we kind of consolidate again, 3 to 5 months, maybe a little longer. Again, I'm not trying to predict it. I'm just pointing out like where we're at here. Something along these lines, right? Where this was only January to April. So this was a 3-month window. And the one before that was a little longer, like 6 months. So something along these lines, like 3, 6 months, whatever. where we just kind of slowly grind down like 30%. I don't think that we're going to see this 50, 80, go back to 20K type stuff. And that's all kind of more wrapped up into my overall analysis of the bigger picture of the markets. I think that at this point, we can't necessarily only compare Bitcoin to Bitcoin, right? In the previous, its previous data, because there's not much behind it. I think that the true blue thing you can only compare Bitcoin to now is gold. And there's a lot of comparisons between gold and Bitcoin that I've come across, obviously, even just of recent. So again, looking at all markets potentially running up and topping off around 2027 and 2028, it's interesting because Bitcoin received its ETF in 2024. And if that's the case, that's about 4 years before this potential, huge hit. And if you go back 20 years, look at gold ETF, the last 20-year market cycle that has occurred, and the last notable high came in 2008. All right, when did gold receive its ETF? Exactly 4 years before that, in 2004. So it's an interesting comparison there. I think that also that Bitcoin is one of the few that actually will outperform if we do have one of these market drops in the next time around, just like gold did back in 2008. It was one of the few things that actually progressed during 2008 to 2012. So that's a lot of ranting just to get start off there. But anyways, hope that answered those two questions. Yes, I think that CME gap probably down at like 109 gets tagged next few months, like at least I think we'd come back to it. All right, let's take a look here. More like a month or two, says the good guy. I'm assuming for the CME gap. Was everybody wrong in this market? Well, it's a tough thing to project. Pump, baby, pump, says Thomas. All right, how's it going, Paul? Pumpkin spice latte again. Don't cop it on the camera. LOL. All right, let's see. Thoughts on ETH outperforming Solana this cycle? Okay, we can touch on that. All right. Is it a safe short Bitcoin around this price? It can be. We're going to take a look at it here, right? So I don't see Bitcoin going below 100,000. Okay. I fully see Bitcoin going at least to 98,000 before the end of the year. But again, that's nobody knows, right? So you may be right. I may be wrong. It is all what it is, right? So reason behind that is that we look to a lot of these high time frame averages, right? And very, very highly statistical probabilities wrapped around these. So basically what this is that this is the average of price from last quarter, which is not a huge deal. More so it's the 6-month one. So this is the average from 6 months, the first 6 months of this year, likely that we come back to it in the next 6 months, right? So in the second part of 2025, it's super likely we come back to this. Of course, like I just said, you could be right. I could be wrong. I'm not looking to overly marry this idea, but this has got some big probabilities behind it that we do come down to that at some point. And I'll try to cover some of that here in a bit, but without looking too negative right now, because I still think that there's more upside, right? So the idea really at hand is that, again, we're pushing up. Somebody asked about a short from these levels. From where we are right this moment, the best one I would say, or the best thing to look for, granted it's a Friday, and this is going very short term, so this is something I look to every day, right? So I'm looking at the previous day information. So this is just from literally yesterday. So we put in this little high right here. All right, we got our yesterday's range based on volume. We've got a volume target all the way back down at 118, and we're coming up to the high. Okay, so reason I point that out is a lot of people will enter shorts. Everybody's trying to short this move because they've missed it. You get the revenge trades like crazy since everybody missed the pump right from 109, and so everybody's trying to short. People see this hit yesterday, and they see the drawdowns. People are going to enter their shorts now. Stop loss right above the high. So a lot of times you'll get that sweep of the high just to knock everybody out. All right, and if you see the if you're looking at low time frame, you'll see the candle come back below. I usually look for at least 15 minutes, 30 minutes, ideally. Then yeah, this would be a decent little short. How low could we go is the question. That's where you kind of have to manage it along the way. Because to me, I still think and see Bitcoin pretty strong here. So this would be really something that could turn into a big short, down the road. But for me, I'd really target, kind of keep it more aggressive locally. And the reasons behind that are this too, right? So again, number one, everybody's trying to short this because everybody missed it. And the term everybody is obviously pretty loose. It's just a lot of people are trying to short. One thing that I was looking for as we came down into this region for the second time. All right. So again, Noted the exact low here when we were trading up in this region based on a harmonic, which was pointed out by actually somebody in the group while I was overseas. But it was a shark harmonic, right? The JT shark, if you remember. So two of the members in the group, one actually named Jaws, oddly enough. But we had the Jaws and T-bone shark here. Okay, so this was a bearish setup that we put in back in August, where we put in the 125 high. All right, and this gave us a few key targets that we'd see the price action come down to. All right, now note it wasn't the end all be all here, but what I was looking for at this point, you can take this setup and it's really only useful to note that we're going to be reversing, right? This is a huge reversal setup. So you can use this in one of two ways. If you're looking to short this, you take profit, you take profit, you take profit. Or if you're looking for the next buy zone, you probably want to be considering somewhere in this region, but you have to pay. You can't just blindly long or blindly buy there, right? You kind of have to look for something new when we get there, a new entry trigger, because again, this could have just completely melted down to the downside. All right, so when we got down to that region, so again, we were targeting at least 110, when we're trading at 125. And sorry about that, had a phone call. Then we flipped it into a bullish setup here, right? So this is now, this is the P shark, because I think that I just found this one. But yeah, bullish shark setup here. And when we were coming down from the other one, again, you had that notable area. But for this, we had a harmonic optimized price. So this is where we're looking at this completion zone, but this can get as deep as this and still be valid. And then on top of that, had a few other things I was looking at around that region. 107 was a big one. I think there's like the Anchor VWAP coming in there or something. But overall, targets of this are back to now 117, 122, and 26, which would be a new all-time high. So that's what I'm kind of monitoring here. And again, why I'm one of like three reasons why I still think we're pushing up towards at least a new all-time high. Whether or not we get 130 or not is the question, but 130 has been the one. All right. Currently, you're pushing up past yesterday's high. So again, on that little, like, if you're trying to short it, somebody would probably be looking for the price to come back down. But again, it's just looking strong here. And one of the things I always point out on these sharks is that 0.5 is your biggest target. All right. So you can see how we reacted when we got there, got a little bit of a pullback, and then we blew through it this second time. And generally speaking, when you push through the 0.5, there's no gold pocket resistance, right? So in this case, you'd be looking for like, gold pockets probably around right here. You usually make a beeline right for the 886. So that's, potentially where we're heading right now. At that point, I fully imagine we push up to the final target, which is 113. You might consolidate here for a minute, but that's like just one setup here, right? So this is actually a valid setup that I've been tracking for a while. And then the other idea here, as we came down for the second, little low here, is that we're putting in potentially a crab setup. All right. So now this is something, again, where anytime I see this B point get put in, especially at a gold pocket, I'm always going to be hunting down the next harmonic setup. And there's a couple different, versions you could go with. This one, again, is not necessarily something that's complete by any means. Can't really go off of this until we get up here. So this is more so something where I'm looking at that previous setup. I'm looking, I'm targeting maybe 126. And in that like unfolding, we could be seeing something along these lines. So that puts us up into like the 130 mark. All right. Again, if we get this set up, major bearish reversal. All right. And this is what probably takes us back down to that 100K, 90K, 80K. Right. So that's what I'm looking for next. Granted, we could spend some time in this region, gives us a few weeks to go look at, the altcoins basically. Right. So let me see real quick. ETH is flirting around that all-time high. All right. We just came into a major, I wouldn't say major, but a local target I was looking at right here. Right. So, again, just kind of zooming out, keeping it relatively simple. I mean, we could literally flood this chart with levels and this and that. All I was looking for here was this move right there, right? Pretty strong. Boom, 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 boom. Pretty much no pullbacks at all. And I pulled this Fibonacci. So gold pocket here, and this 382 is just pulled from this low to that high. And generally speaking, when you have a strong move like this, you don't get a deep correction, which is usually the gold pocket or 786 or what have you. A lot of times you basically just strong move up, you pull down to the 382 continuation, right? So front runs everybody's entry, everybody, that's looking for a pullback or looking for a key region. On top of that, this one took a little bit of time. So this was from August 25th to about over a month. And in a month's time, when you just slowly kind of grind lower, what happens? Everybody starts to get more and more bearish. They feel like the price will never reverse and all those things, right? So very few are probably looking for opportunity, right? Where you should. And yeah, ended up taking all the lows. So another bullish little setup here locally. And it just gives us a recipe to run it back. Still looking for at least this $5,000 area on ETH. So again, if Bitcoin pushes up and we have a few weeks where we're kind of killing it for the whole market, I think that we'll at least see that. It's not really far off of where we're at, like 12-15%. Before I look at other things in total, wanted to just look at the total market and the total too. So this was another thing that for when we were in the fear, right, all the way back in April, this is one thing that kind of alluded to my more bullish bias at the time. Not that it was the only thing, but it was just an additional piece. And just a simple little outlook here from the entire bull run, basically. And this is, again, total market with Bitcoin. And Burton, someone's asking, perfect. So we're talking about total 3. So I'll get to that here in a second too. So the total market with Bitcoin, I'm just measuring this based off of the overall low. So the 15K FTX collapse, back in the day, I just literally am taking an anchored VWAP from that. And you can see how this entirety of this move up has just, really held support. And it's not holding it perfectly. Again, like trading, investing, it's not always perfect. So there's been days where we dip below, of course. So that's what comes into the fact of, like, you kind of have to manage and monitor across the way and, be willing to adapt when things shift. But this overall held here, you get the, huge move up. Now we're talking, $74,000 Bitcoin at the time. It's slow burn to the downside. What do we do? Pulled right back to that anchored VWAP. Again, VWAP is just a volume weighted average of price. It's very similar to moving averages. It is a moving average. It's just based on volume instead of just price itself. So carry trade news right at the low. Everybody's fearful, expecting lower. What you get? The next burst to the upside. Right here, you get that pullback again. Tariff war low right into the anchored VWAP again. And then we get that move to the upside. So previously over the all-time high, we're holding it pretty strong. It's debatable on if we're going to get, like, I've been targeting this region up here, right? So this is just an overall next target area. Just hard to know if we're going to push all the way up to it, right? It's like a 30% move. And I guess it could be done. It's only 10% off the like basically where we've been bouncing around. So takes this up, like, I would just say like the 5 trillion, 4.5 to 5 trillion, just something, but more so just looking at this is still just a pretty decent little uptrend, holding the all-time high for now. So still got to be, targeting higher here. The altcoin market and the total 3. So altcoin with Ethereum here is total 2. And well before, I think at least well before many were like looking for this, I was noting this pretty heavily, and more so was the idea of this pullback. Because right now, if you're looking at this, you're probably looking at it like a traditional cup and handle for anyone out there, right? Is you see this huge rounded bottom formation. You get this smaller version of that, and it's usually the cup, the handle. You get a breakout, right? And you measure basically, the width of the cup from the breakout, and that's your target. Only problem with this is a lot of times many don't get into positions, or many won't get, many will look for the breakout before anything, which nothing wrong with that, but it's just like you kind of miss out on so much before that. So I look to hopefully catch the more aggressive entries. And then so that when we get up to these regions, when you get the tomfoolery, because you can break out for a day and you get a little dump and then you break out again, right? It's very, very taxing on the actual breaks and everything like that. And especially when everybody's looking for it, because now I see this a lot. So it's just something to be aware of. But either way, this was a really nice move. Run up here, pull back for this initial little downtrend, channel right here, right into the gold pocket. This is when we had $1,400 ETH. I mean, this was the low, right? This was April 15th. So right as we came into that, that was the best day to, probably get involved with certain things. And since then, you got now the move up, right? And this is a 260% move out of Ethereum since then. So again, anybody that's looking to get involved now is coming in at the backside of that. You're talking Solana was $97. Now it's 220. So that's 100 and something percent up. So Not that there's not more risk in the altcoins. It's just it's hard to for me. I don't love to come into things after huge pumps like that, but it's what it is. You gotta make your move at some point. But overall, idea here is that total market still looking up. Altcoin market is hitting resistance here, but if we do flip this, I think we got some upside. I mean, that's just clear as day and simple little setup here. And then somebody mentioned the total three, which so again, you went total market, that was everything, including Bitcoin. Total two is excluding Bitcoin. So this is pretty much, Ethereum heavy, especially when ETH moves. Obviously this is going to drag this up quite a bit. And then total three is everything else, which is an interesting chart these days just because, and it's pretty much the same setup as total two, but there's so many altcoins, man. Like when I, Nick even, I'm sure can attest to this, 2017 was just a totally different ball game. Even 2021 to some degree, but it was well different than 2017, right? So that was, in my eyes, that was the true blue biggest bull run that you could ever imagine in crypto. I know there was 2013 ahead of that, and Bitcoin probably excelled well, but you didn't have all the altcoins at that point, right? I think that truly the 2017 bull run with the altcoins at hand, that was when we saw XRP, Tron, everything 100x in weeks, and you haven't seen things like that minus like straight up Solana, poo coins basically, and even then it's just like kind of few and far between. And now I think that the market is kind of evolving and adapting to some degree. Also, it is massive. So you're talking about trillions of dollars now, and all these altcoins that are, sandbagging everything. You and me could create an altcoin right now, pumpkin spice latte, Data Dash Express. And if you guys coin that up, you better drop me some. Just kidding. And we could just make coins out of thin air and projects and everything like that. So there's a lot of projects there, and I think you have to be a little choosy, with which ones you go with. I think that there's still some opportunity with some of the dinosaur projects. It's not like 50x opportunities, but there's definitely some moves there to be had. And I think Ethereum is a really good version, a really good example of that. And a lot of people will think that Ethereum has underperformed Bitcoin and what have you. And it probably has in these last few years. But if you lined up ETH and Bitcoin from 2018 low or COVID low, right, you're talking $86 ETH and 3,000. I think 3,000 was pretty much the low for 2018 Bitcoin and, Rona drop. So $86 ETH to 5,000 versus 3,000 to 120. I mean, you get at least, it's at least in the same category, right? But ETH is not necessarily underperformed from that time frame, from 2022, $1,000 low to now versus Bitcoin's 15 to 120. Yes, in that shorter time frame it has, but to me, I think ETH has still been a decent play for a longer period, if you haven't just come in. And but yeah, the other thing about it is that I think that truly it's crazy to me that Bitcoin, I think we can all agree at this point is now the one, has been the one, but I think people see it now that it's been holding at these crazy levels for so long. It's priced out almost everyone. If you don't already have any Bitcoin, or if you haven't, been able to accumulate or acquire, or even have, an altcoin position that you could transition into Bitcoin. It's always been the thinking, right? Ever since like altcoins really went crazy, that the multiples of altcoins would be better than just buying Bitcoin. And lo and behold, those big voices that kind of all talked everybody out of getting Bitcoin. And what I mean by that is like the JP Morgans and like all the bankers and all the people that really shut it down for so long, just to basically probably be scooping it all up with the idea that, this would be, what takes off. So really wild to see how everybody went to the altcoin bags, and for the most part are probably down or consistently losing if you were coming in at the wrong times. And it's just kind of sad. Anyways, total three, I'd mentioned the 1.4 trillion and the 2 trillion. So that's just these two marked here. And reason being is that this, again, super simple cup status here with your handle. Again, I don't love and to be honest, like this is what I started. I think everybody starts and should start with the traditional, pattern setups and things like that. I think that over time they've really lost their luster because everybody uses them, right? And it's just such a universal language at this point. I think there's times when they play out, of course, because it's like you got to give most people You'll see this play out, for example, just this one, and then the next time you see it, you'll go all in on it, thinking last time this happened, so I want to get in, and then it doesn't play out right. I guess what I'm saying is a lot of these like traditional pattern setups, bull flag, bear flag, head and shoulders, things like that. The full on moves and measured moves of them a lot of times I don't think ever really hit. So I guess I would say they have like a lower win rate for the targets to fully hit. So that's just something to kind of be aware of. I definitely note it, but I like to front run like the measured moves and stuff because that's where everybody's going to target. All right. So that's just like an example of this. So the reason I noted in Discord, I think somebody had mentioned that keep an eye on these two is again because also with the bigger vision here at play is that Bitcoin either pushes up from where we are right now, which it's already pushing up again, or it was earlier. We go to 130 or we, flirt around this 120, 124 area. And the market continues with it for a few weeks, right? So let's just pretend total 3 breaks out here. Because in theory, you got measured move up to here. And again, all I'm doing with this, folks, is just taking the bottom of this to basically the top side here, and you measured off your breakout point, and that's what gives us that little measured move. It's not exact science, right? So that's another thing I don't love about it. It's a little subjective, right? So because maybe I went, maybe I go lower, maybe I go here. Like it's subjective. It's not necessarily as exact as some of the other things we look to, such as like exact Fibonacci levels or volume levels or some of these high time frame averages that we look to. So all those levels are exact, right? That's anything that's basically coming across the screen horizontally. Those are factual levels. That's not just me, taking a bull flag and subjectively moving my lines when it doesn't, play out the way I want it to, or just the same thing. Like some people go off wicks and some people go off bodies, and it's all subjective, right? So I like to not use as subjective things as much as possible, but I will overlay that with everything else. So in this case, measured move is something that could take us like 4.5 trillion on just the altcoins. We're sitting at 1.15 right now. So thinking out loud, does that sound super realistic in a short period of time? Probably not, right? So that's like a 3x on the entire market. All right. So that's why more so I'm pointing out these two levels here, because again, if you're looking at this blindly and anybody else that's just probably coming into this setup, it's like, oh man, the big arrow is going to be drawn, right? It's like it's going up to here for sure. And then imagine the disappointment if all you get is something like this. And even if you just get that and a pullback to, back test this region, and then you get an overall haul. This is a daily and weekly time frame, by the way. So this is a huge time frame here. So even if we do make our way up to this, I don't think it'll be overnight. And more so, I picture something along these lines where you do get a little breakout. Okay, you probably look for our little trend-based fibs here. And then this is what I'd be more so looking at, like short term here. Bitcoin pulls up to those target areas. Maybe we get that 20, 30% slow pullback in Bitcoin for a few months. And then we make that jaunt, because truthfully, folks, if looking ahead, I think 2026 is going to be major for altcoins, which probably goes totally against most people. Anticipating us to have a little bit more ups, and actually, like, I feel like we did pretty well, right? We didn't do too bad. I think everybody gets very upset and frustrated with some things, but you can't, ignore the fact that things like XRP, even, I know that's not everybody's favorite, but 600, 700% rally in 1 month. That's just one example. Solana went from 90 to 2 something. Maybe we push up to 300. You have these 100% bursts that do come. It really does depend on timing. And the other problem is, and I understand this, that people get in years ago, they've held, they're down so bad. And these small bursts are great and all for somebody that just got in, but like if you've been holding, it's not fun. So I totally understand that. And in theory here, I'm thinking that the idea here is that 2026 is actually going to be a pretty good year for altcoins. And not only because of this setup here alone, where this is a simple one, it goes back to the big picture at hand, which is 2027, 2028. And I'm really leaning on 2027 if I'm, a cucumber to my head, right? And I had to guess what year was going to be like the high everything comes in and peaks off at. 2027 is the one I'm leaning into. And so 2026, I think is going to be a good year for the altcoins overall. Now that's the kicker, right? Because there still could be downside and all that good stuff. The biggest reason behind that is this chart. All right. So, very first video that Nicholas Merton, right here at Data Dash, and I did in like January, I think, of this year. We were looking at this setup. All right. And mind you, January of this year was like here ish, right? So we weren't even completely bottomed out yet. And I know this is like the ETH versus BTC. So this is really measuring Ethereum, not just all the altcoins, but generally speaking, when Ethereum does well or does bad, usually the altcoins follow to some degree. Again, this is where you kind of have to be choosy on which ones you get into and things like that. But overall, I anticipated Ethereum to have a huge reversal, right? So this is a multi-year bullish setup that I anticipated when we completed it to take 1.5 to 3 years to get to the target. And the main target I'm referring to is this one. So this ended up bottoming out in April of this year. We got to just about the main target area, which we front ran it for now, but we did hit a key area. So again, earlier when we were talking about how Bitcoin might not go below 100K, which it may not, but to me, I still see a world where it does just based off of probability. And the reason being is that 6-month pivot, right? That high time frame average from earlier this year, likely to be met this year, right? The rest of the year. This is exactly what we had from last year. This is last year's average of price for ETH BTC, right? So this is a year time frame. So it was likely in this year we were going to come up to it. Smacked it right. Did got there in a hurry, right? So anyways, the idea behind this is that ETH would outperform Bitcoin. And then same thing here. This is a big time frame. So it's not like we're just going to go straight up. The idea would be more so you come up to these levels, you get a cool off period, you go for that next leg up, right? And even look down, like I'm just playing around with this on, in a sense of just if this was super symmetrical, I guess. But down at the bottom, you can see, we're into 2027 around that time. That's just playing around. But timing wise, looking at December of 2026. So that's why, again, I'm anticipating next year to be a relatively good year because for this target to come in, I'm targeting December 2026 earliest into 2028. And that's a big wide window I get. But yeah, anyway, so that's one thing I'm really looking for here. So it's just how we get there. And of course, you got to deal with the day-to-day stuff. I mean, just think about how much has occurred since 2023, right? Like Bitcoin is at 15,000. We've gone through so much negative things, and the price still has reached, the levels that it's reached. So the short-term stuff is definitely hard to navigate, I think, emotionally. But that's one thing I try to tune out as much as possible. Look for these big moves ahead of time and try to trigger that. But this is also right in line with, again, that housing market cycle, right? The 20 years, 2026 to 2029 timeframe. Okay. And I'm not overly married to anything. I'm just, again, like this is things that we've been tracking for years, and it's on track so far. Nothing has shifted from this. So that's one of the things there. So total 3 altcoins overall, I think still have some big upside in the next coming year or so. Okay. So it's just something that we'll have to see how it unfolds. I think many would disagree with that. And especially because we're in a position now where the altcoins just feel absolutely, just dead. And I would agree with, that has been compared to anything that we've seen in the past. And another thing too, is that I covered a video where this week, September 29th was basically where the amount of time that we spent in the last bull market, actually the last 2 technically, but the equivalent of how long we spent in 2021's bull run from 2018 low to 2021 November 9th 69K high, right? That exact time, based on, you could count the days basically, but Fibonacci time even has been the exact time we've spent now from the FTX collapse low 2022 till now. This week. So in theory, if you're going off the 4-year cycle, then the 4 years is up, right? Altcoins feel like they haven't done anything because, again, we're doing more so you get more bursts and consolidation, which is what, just basically gets everybody in at the highs and then gets them all out on the drops. And then you pump again, you get everybody back in, you get them all out on the drops, or just nobody's even interested because they feel like they're just going to lose anyway. So, if we are to see a notable correction here again in Bitcoin in the next coming weeks and months. I think that everybody will tie that to the 4-year cycle, like we said earlier, and think to the fact that you're going to have a guaranteed 1 year down, the same thing we've always seen, even though this whole bull market has been so different so far. And I think that as we kind of kick off next year, 2026, I think that things turn around for the altcoins. Again, could be wrong, right? I anticipated a little bit more of upside this year even, and it didn't occur. So, to be fair, that is that. Even though ETH has been the number one thing that I've been looking at heavily, but these other ones could. And the reason I'm stating that more than anything, not to just get anybody overly excited, because that's one thing I don't ever want to do. I don't want everybody piling in altcoins or anything like that. Just sharing that I think that we're in a time period now where it's been elongated, where everybody's like literally done with altcoins, right? If you say the word altcoin rally, altcoin season, it's your shoot out the room. Generally speaking, that's kind of where you want to be if you are an altcoin investor or trader right now. But at the end of it too, another big piece that I like to highlight is that even though I think that some of these altcoins could see decent moves, in the coming years, I'm more picky as well than I would have been like 2017, where I could, just throw in anything and anything. And a big reason behind that is that when all is said and done in 2027, 2028, whenever that next market collapse occurs, and we have to go to regulations at some point with all the cryptos, I think we truly get a .com era pop with these altcoins, right? So that means all of them probably go to zero, and you have a handful that remain. And don't know which ones those are going to be, but the only ones I would put big risk behind is anything that has that ETF approval. The only thing, in my opinion, that may make it through for the long haul. So it doesn't mean that things won't pop in between then and all that stuff. So it's just kind of a bigger picture idea that I've been really focusing on last few years too. But to tie in the old, at least maybe we have another good year or two coming here for overall altcoins, is the dominance chart here too. So I covered this video earlier this week, and huge weekly time frame. This is a yearly multi-year outlook here, and we've re-entered this overall range after what I like to call the stairs up, right? So a lot of times you see you actually got it right here, a little bit more aggressive staircase, but you have the stairs up over here and you get the elevator down situation. Okay. And this was 2021 January. This was the last major, altcoin rally, I guess you could say, like the major one versus like the smaller ones we've had recently. And over the last few years, we staircase, got a little drop right here. Looking for now a lower high in the dominance, which it could come here. We could go a little lower and then come back, right? But overall, I'm anticipating a elevator down move at some point, and probably into next year at this level, because it's just the timing now is just pushing us into that window. And if we were to see that, that's when you do get, again, not every single thing is a guaranteed, 10x, 20x or anything like that. But the overall market, I think, can see some really big moves. And then, of course, the big momentum winners, like back in this period, it was like metaverse and gaming and stuff like that, really saw some incredible moves. Hard to say what, I'm sure it's the AI world is going to be the big ones, and potentially even that metaverse stuff coming back around, right? So who knows? I don't know. I'm not trying to predict that stuff by any means, but really just tracking this at the moment. So another piece that just kind of gives me an inkling, and timing wise, I'm not going to pull it all right now, but I got fib time pulls that basically line it up for this to come in this region at the end of next year. I'm sorry, into 2027. All right. So that'd be, again, slow move, potentially down. We've had years of slow move up. So that's kind of the idea behind that, in a sense. All right. Let's look at some questions really quickly. Someone wants to look at virtuals. Worth the investment. We'll take a look at virtual. Man, it's so funny. Virtuals is always one that manages to come up, which is fine. Virtuals has been a really decent one for, I will say, a decent one for like a higher risk play. So definitely caught a couple of moves off of it. I think either earlier this year or maybe the end of last. But yeah, it's been a decent little mover. But again, super high risk on that virtuals one. Deb says, smash the like. Thank you. Just extend the cycle by the time it looks for tariffs, borders be sealed. Okay. Ba, ba, ba. Pullbacks are normal, needed to go forward. I agree. Potentially, I can take a look at Pangu. I haven't really looked at that in a while. Maybe I did. I'll put it on the list here. Arrow. And do you think we may have 3 to 5 weeks of an altcoin rally? Yeah, I think that we're in that realm. And again, it's one of those things where usually I'm a relatively contrarian to a lot of the things, like when people get overly amped up about October and Q4 being extremely bullish and all this. Granted, those are, real. Those things do occur most times. It's just the timing of it usually that always hits, right? So what I mean by that is, like, I think that a lot of times I try to keep in mind, last year, for example, October 1st, we had a 10 or 15% correction on Bitcoin. Overall, we rallied to the upside, but it's that initial, like, everybody thought one way, it kind of shifted, at least for a short period of time. And that's kind of where I am thinking here in the Q4 window, where I do think we actually have upside. Let's take a look at Bitcoin while we're sitting here, see if she's pushing up, and she is. I do think we got more upside. Okay. And could be 4, 5, 6 weeks. Yep. Where maybe we even head towards the end of the year. And again, maybe it just totally turns into this. Look at that, baby. Look at that. Let's see if she hits all-time high, where we're just playing around here. Yeah, the short answer is yes. I think we have 3 to 5 weeks at least. And more so, it goes with more so, I'm looking for certain things with the price reactions. Okay. So again, this new crab, like, is just one thing, but last thing I'll touch on with Bitcoin, and then we'll look at some of those altcoins, right? The Pangu and Arrow and virtuals. Big piece of Bitcoin to me is this setup, right? So again, if you're in the group, you're very familiar with this. I recently touched on it, I think, in the YouTube channel here at Data Dash, but the number one setup I've been tracking for a while here, and even into the point where this is these two are Fibonacci time frames. So just like you can look at retracements for Fibonacci price action to the upside or the downside, you can actually utilize time as well to look for time pivots based off of extrapolated off of moves, pretty much. So in the last few iterations here, the gold pocket in time was where we kind of tracked sideways, and then that usually has led to the final move here. So last year, I was looking at this heavily. It was in September, tracking into this region. The target area of this was 122 to 140. Really, it's 143-ish. But again, I'm not looking to be exact, like more so a zone. Okay. And then on top of that, timing. So the week of September 29th, which is what we're in right now, 2025, is the next time pivot where generally we get a reversal. Okay. So in this case, as we've been rocking and rolling, it's, more so leads into the fact that we roll over. Thing about this is that, again, huge time frame. The last one was notably right on the docket right here. It was for the 31st of October. The market, reversed 10 days later. All right. So this one, again, I'm not looking at it to be exact by any means, and it could be wrong even. Like, I'm just tracking it as we go, but keeping a pretty level head right here, because we are in a window where a reversal is likely. Okay. So not looking for it to be a huge bear market or anything like that, although I guess it could turn into it, but definitely paying attention to see it. And if we push into any higher here, like the 130 to 140 mark within 2 weeks of this date, I'll just be paying really close attention. All right. And again, that's something that not only merged with everything else I've been looking at, lines up with a pullback to not there, not like 40K. It's this big piece. But that takes us probably back down to like 190, 80K. Right. But yes, up until then, think that we have a few weeks and again this weekly time frame here, right? So even here when we had this, huge drawdown, you had a few weeks before things really started unfolding. Same thing back in 2017, right? You had a few weeks before everything started unfolding. Altcoins went decent. So I do think we got a few weeks ahead of us. It's just trying to keep an eye on old Biddy because she can really make a bad time for us real quick. Happy Wolverine says, what worries them is that if Bitcoin pulls back, it continues to take the entire market while the dominance remains intact. I mean, that is accurate as well. If you're talking about when we were just looking at the dominance a second ago. However, the dominance would need to fall, obviously, and the market could be falling at the same time, I suppose. But generally, I think that we would see, some upside. Again, take it for what it's worth. I thought this year would be a little bit better on some of the altcoins after April as well. I think we had some decent bursts. Ethereum was one that I definitely expected to do well, and it has from the low at least. And so it's not an exact science, unfortunately, but I could just the contrarian piece of me just has to at this point, I just feel like everybody is counting the altcoins out. I think the timing is still important. So I do see a world where we get a little burst again here in the near term. It rips it away again if Bitcoin pulls back, towards that 70, 80, 90K. I said 70, but 80 and 90 really is what I'm looking at. And then everybody would totally be out, right? And then just imagine if the alts just pushed up from there all of 2026 when everybody's thinking it'll be a huge bear. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud there. So we'll talk more about it as things go on. All right. Got a few more minutes here. Try to talk on some of these. Let's look at virtuals. So previous to this region right here, when we were coming all the way down, we had a few areas down here. I can't remember what it was. I know that this was like the buy zone that we'd highlight. I changed it for since then, basically. But I was looking for a push up to the macro 382, and we smacked it and then just came off of it. So again, virtuals is if I'm not mistaken, high risk, lower cap. It might be up in the couple hundred million, but very, very big piece when the AI agents were popping off. They may return again. Who knows? Pretty much just sunk past this gold pocket here. But yeah, I mean, overall, just let's see here. It's a tough one because I got this big zone below us that that I was when we smacked that 382. This is where I thought we'd come back down to. And you still could, right? It's not that it's necessarily off the table. So no matter what, I guess you got to be prepared for something like that. And we all know how these altcoins can just snap back to 30, 40, 50% drops like it's nothing, especially this one being a little bit more risky. So it's just one of those things where if I'm looking to enter new here, where it's like I don't want to miss the next move up, but you got to be aware that there's some potential to come down pretty deep. It's like you might want to have, if this was me, I'd probably split my orders up a little bit. This wouldn't be something I'm putting mad size into anyway. So, but if I'm just trying to, catch this potential move where we push up into this area, which is like a 200% move, and I'm looking to get in here, I very rarely will try to DCA something 50%. So you might want to even like cut your loss and then just look for a lower at that point. But that's just something that I have to that I'd say be aware of, is that we could come down to 55 cents, like flash crash style, and it'd be not unheard of. There's a lot stacked right there. And then more than anything, you probably get a, nice little harmonic play out of that, right? Something along those lines. Okay. And again, just spitballing that if we were to take a hit. Otherwise, you're sitting pretty much at the low side of the range here. So it's always where you want to be considering to put on some risk. Even if we just pushed it back to the high side here, which is, something that's relatively normal to see, even if you just end up ranging around, it's up to like $1.90. So that's a sizable little move there from where we are now, about 70%. But yeah, overall, looking for these other key regions up here. Okay. Granted, we're pretty much in the middle. So you gotta take that for what it's worth. When we were trading down in this region, it was a little bit more easier to look at this and say, all right, we're in the key area, might go a little deeper. What was this risk, right? If you were coming in here, you were like, okay, it might go 10% lower to a key level, and it did not. And this is a good example of sometimes when, I might want to get a piece here so I don't, I got some skin in the game in case it does reverse. But if it goes lower, I'll probably add to it. And so I won't maybe go crazily all in here with the position that I'm looking at, of course. Like, again, this is not something I'm throwing major size into. So that's how I play this. And, we're at the low side end right here. Bitcoin's looking decent right now. So if we're looking at a potential altcoin rally, maybe push back up to the high side. If you break that range, then we target up to like $3. That's how I look at virtuals. But yeah, just be weary that 55 cents is looming. Jimbo, you should be able to rewind this. So it'll be live after the fact, like to fully view, but you should be able to go back to the beginning if you'd like to. All right. Someone asked about Chainlink. What was the other one? I don't think I'm going to be able to do Pangu just because I'd have to kind of take a fresh look at that. We don't have too much time, but I'll try to maybe post that in the group today. And then maybe next week I'll pull it up. Arrow is another one, and Link. Let's just look at those really quickly. All right, so Chainlink. Zoom it out here a bit. Nice little range rotation, okay, that we had briefly. So right here is what I'm referring to. Runs the range here, pushes up, creates this bearish harmonic setup with two major targets. Again, targets are just things that we're looking to see, noting that this is likely to pull back to look for that next fresh entry or that next major support. So in this case, the one is sitting right here at $21, which it already came down to, obviously, and held pretty well. And what I liked about this was it was stacked as the high side of the range. So again, you're like breaking the range, just like a head and shoulders or descending channel or falling wedge. When you get the breakout and the retest, right, of those patterns, like it's the same thing here. You want to see that breakout and the retest of the range high or low, and then if you're looking for lower. But in this case, you break out, back test, and then we look to continue up. And on top of that, it was stacked, right? Anchored VWAP sitting right here, 382, target of the harmonic, top side of the range. So as long as we're above $21, I'm targeting the next move up towards about $38 on Chainlink. 21 is the line in the sand, though, where it's if we start living back in this region, you get back in the range, and then of course you run the risk of just coming all the way back down to the lows. So that's your first major warning sign, is that 21 gets lost. It's not going to look great. Do have $16 to be aware of, but ideally I'd like to hold above this, especially if we're going to see this rest of the market kind of push higher here. Do I think BNB will reach 1400? I know that got a simple chart here. Do I think it'll reach 1400 when? At some point? Yes. Thought maybe it was like a today thing. Yeah, I mean, this is clean. Just breakout, retest the 1-to-1, right? Price discovery, pretty much 1275 and 1400 are next. So yeah, I think that BNB is on our way. Man, there was one more. I'm sorry, I even mentioned it earlier. Besides Pengu, that somebody asked for. Arrow, that's it. We'll take a look at that. Aptos, I think somebody else mentioned that. Maybe it was Deb. Sorry, in here. This is just something that I tend to look for personally when I'm looking to spread out some coins, get a little diversification. Is that I look for things that are at the lows. I think that I look for things that are boring people. Maybe some people aren't even talking about. Again, this is just based on technicals. I don't know any of the fundamentals behind this project, to be honest with you. And generally speaking, I usually don't when I'm talking on any of these. So take that for what it's worth. But usually when I see something like this, basically just sandbagging the low, I take the risk again to where I've been picking this up personally. So just along the lows here and just looking for a simple range rotation, and meaning in this case from low to high, it takes us up to like $10. We've obviously flirted with this point of control a few times already. There is the middle of the range here, this dotted line stacked with a little untapped high time frame average sitting there. So that's definitely a big key area that I'll be looking to as well. And yeah, just looking to see if we run this up and a Hail Mary on Aptos. And this is, again, not like overly married to this, not calling for it, just something that when I get into positions like this, I pretty much anticipate to scale out on the way up, and I'll look to take some profit probably at this region, right? For example, and it's a 55% move. And this is just spot, right? This is not like leverage short-term trade. This is, buying, holding. I've been scaling into this for several months now at this point, and 55% move on that larger, play that I'll be, having a position for. I'll scale out here, and if it pulls back on me, then it is what it is, and I'll kind of adjust as we go, and then I'll look for next move higher, and then probably take a little bit more off the table, but still pretty much in from lower, right? And then if we flip this region, I'll leave some here to ride to that final area that I could see us going to. But I wouldn't want to get involved freshly up here, right? Because again, people like me are taking profit, taking profit, taking profit. The market ends up coming back, people, and all those things. And so it's just, you're at more risk of a pullback up here versus when you're trading pretty much at the lows. Okay. The only thing that has to come into effect down here is your patience, the ability to kind of sift through the noise of the negative news and all that good stuff. And then once you get to these regions, you're in a good position, because even if we were to pull back 20%, I have time to, think about what I want to do, all that good stuff. But that's how you can kind of turn a position more short-term-ish, or even something that I'm only looking to clear, only looking for like 150% move, how that can turn into potentially a 600% move. Okay. But that's, again, taking it level by level, step by step here. Need to flip this 540, run it up to the high side, and then look for that higher opportunity if it comes. An arrow, before I forget, there's two of them, so I hope this is the right one. Aerodrome Finance. Let's take a look. Let's take off that. Yeah, so last time I was looking at this, I'm sure we were getting around this region, right? So pretty much just running this range. And what you want to see at this point, we got an all-time high, and this is a newer project. Again, hope it's the right one that you were referring to, whoever asked, Seth. And all-time high sitting at about 235. Now, if we look at this in a zoomed out way, this is something that was like 8 cents for quite a while, topped off at about 260. So it's had a really big run. Now, it has been consolidating well, so that's what you want to see, right, on something like this. So you don't want to see it completely just give everything right back up. So it's had a pretty decent run, been holding pretty well. At this point, you're up again pretty heavily. So it's not ideal. And this is kind of like where we were just talking on Aptos, right? When you're at these low sides, obviously I know we're not there right now, but that's when you probably want to be looking to get involved. So the people that did buy here probably scale out a little bit around these regions. They are up 250%, let's just say, as an example. They can totally eat a pullback here locally. And let's just pretend we pulled back to gold pocket, all right, which is a super normal, traditional little, pullback here, which could be, again, this is like 50% from the highs, 30% from where we are right now. At any moment, you always have to be aware of that, especially after you're in the middle of a run, right? So that's the one thing I'll always note, is that when you're coming, if somebody's looking for a new position, right? I know Seth might already just have a position, but I'm just pointing this out, that where it's like, if I say that I'm looking for higher here, we could still very well come down 30% before that. Okay. So that's just something that when you're looking for new entries, you have to be aware of that. It's not something you ever want to just rush into. There's more to it than even just me quickly on an hour stream saying one thing, right? But overall, I do anticipate this to head higher here, right? We just need to clear this 120. The all-time high is obviously the next little, speed bump. And then ultimately there's a bunch of things stacked up right here, about 3 to 440. But we are at the high side of the range, so it got to be said, right, that we could very well get a little pullback here, and then you have to modify, manage that along the way, because if things start to turn and this doesn't get a pump and Bitcoin starts to come down, then you run the risk of this completely just round tripping, right? So not a great fresh entry here, But if we're looking to see how we can take this up, looking to claim, 125, run it back to the all-time high. And then at that point, the big targets for me still remain about $4-ish. All right, last one. XRP, still looking for this potential run here to 450. All right. It is trading pretty much in this range. Similar to Arrow, had a really nice run. I know people are bored of it at the moment because they probably bought high, but anybody that got in 40s and 50 cents, huge 600% rally just about, and been holding. All right. So that's not bad, right? That's what you want to see. But ultimately, yeah, I'm looking to see if we get this push up. Again, not a guarantee. Need to clear this range basically at about 327, and then the big Mac Daddy target I have, and I say that in the sense of like if we were to get a crazy rally right now out of XRP, and we just pushed up to 450, I'd be totally out of XRP personally. And I have a sizable position that I got back into. So if you are aware, like last year, I got a really big position around 51 cents. I scaled out on the way up to 274. Took some smaller positions around here, but I waited for this move. Literally had a Coinbase, buy order basically in place for 179, and the reason being high time frame averages, like we covered a couple times already, right? So that was a 50% pullback off of the high. Picked up my position again, and I'm just looking for that, right? So I like the 450 spot. It completes a potential harmonic setup. It's a one-to-one as far as a price area for this trend. It's also front runs $5, right? So not that I don't think XRP could see $5 in the future, but on this next run, if we just pushed up from here, 450 would be where I'd happily be out. And even if that's not the high, I just know that there's a big spot at 450. Yeah. All right, folks, that is where I'm going to leave you all off today. Hope you all enjoyed this live stream. We'll be doing this on Fridays at 11 a.m. So be sure to tune back in for those, bring some questions. Obviously, I try to keep up with the chat a little bit more laid back, just kind of going over some things, some ideas, kind of spitballing. If you guys would like to see more of everything you saw today, be sure to check out data-pro.com. That's where you can join the Data Discord. You also get access to Nick's Data report, which he does send out monthly with a mid-month live stream as well, and I believe. So aside from that, hope you all have a great weekend. Hope you all have enjoyed the week so far. It's been definitely a fun one. I'll see you all again on Monday. Until then, everybody, cheers.